Good morning, all. So, we are continuing the conversation. We are on Surah 12, Surah 12, right? And we are continuing the conversation from yesterday. It's actually a continuation of the topic from yesterday, Islamic principles and virtues, right? Understanding Islamic principles and virtues from an Islamic perspective, right? And as all of these teachings, all of the teachings I've been teaching, right, from speak go up, right, in the list of my videos are Quranic teachings, right, are messages from the Quran, right. um so it is said that the Quran has been sent down as a book that you might understand, right? So it's a book of understanding, right? And God might just choose you to teach you the interpretation of certain narratives, events, or dreams that you may have, right? That He may complete His favor upon you and your family, right? So, moving along from yesterday with regard to the principles and virtues, right? So, in this way of life, people are required to what? Have empathy, or you are encouraged to have empathy, right? Empathy towards another human being, empathy towards other beings in the world, right? Empathy towards others generally, friends, relatives, neighbors, nations, people in the world at large. Meaning what? I can feel what you are going through. Empathy, right? Empathy, right? Not just sympathy, which is okay, I see you going through a situation, I feel sorry for you, I feel sorry. But hey, empathy. I'm placed in this particular position so I could have a heart for you, right? I could feel, I can experience what it is you are going through. I am willing to put myself in your shoes and walk in your shoes, and I'm willing to face what it is you are facing, right? That's empathy, right? Empathy, understanding, and not just any understanding, that's deep understanding, right? A deep understanding. The book refers to it as what? Being sincere counselors to each other, right? Being a sincere counselor to somebody else, right? So in your life, if you are part of this life and you are encouraged to encourage people to be a part of this life as well, be sincere counselors to each other, right? And this could refer to a relationship, romantic relationship, it could refer to a friendship, it could refer to family, whatever it is. This is different from gossiping, right? This is different from you being in a romantic relationship and you're gossiping about your husband or wife. That's wrong, right? Gossiping about your husband or wife with another person, right, is wrong, right? Being a sincere counselor to another person is fine, is realizing that hey, there's a problem existing here, right, and taking a measure to fix this problem, right? There's a problem existing, right, in this relation, whatever it is, right, and taking appropriate action to fix this, right, through counseling. And this doesn't have to be professional. I emphasize this a million times. It doesn't have to be you go and see a doctor, medical doctor, whoever, right? It is in Islam, right? People counsel each other, right, by virtue of a deep understanding of each other, right? Hearing each other's perspective, hearing each other's view, right? Listening to each other's perspective, listening to each other's view, right? And understanding is the only way that we could actually solve the problems in the world, right? Knowing, hey, what you go through because of the circumstance, hey, what you go through because of that circumstance, right? And like I say, this is very, very different from you gossiping about another person. Oh, hey, there are some men or some women who go to other friends or other people and say, hey, my wife, this my husband, this my wife, this my husband, this, right? This is not sincere counseling, right? This is now is referred to as sincere counseling, right? First of all, if you're in a romantic relationship, you seek to resolve that issue between yourselves, right? And if you can't, both of you seek that intervention. It doesn't even have to be professional. It could just be somebody who wants to help you, right? Somebody who wants to understand you, right? Somebody who's near to you, right? It doesn't have to be any professional anything, right? It could simply be what? Reading the Quran, right? It could simply be reading the damn book. This is what I've been saying. Read the book and read it multiple times, right? You will come to understand yourself and you will come to understand others in a way better way that you did before, right? And people might think that this is, oh, I get paid to do this, I get paid to do this, so come on, like that. I haven't received a single cent for this, and I don't want a single cent for this, right? This is not me marketing anything. There's not me marketing a book, right? If I were to come and market this book, I would come and read out, oh, who published this, whoever, but the book doesn't change, right? Remember, the book don't change, right? So I would have come and market and say, hey, purchase this book from this person, published by whoever, right? I'm not marketing this book, right? I'm saying to read the book to help you, yourself, the people around you, and everything, right? And to convey the message, right? So empathy, having empathy, that's one. Next, this refers to children. So we're talking about building families from scratch, right? From an Islamic perspective, building families from scratch, right? So, talking about children being able to eat well and play, right? So when you have children, right, it's not to force anything down their throat, including the Quran, right? It's not to force any knowledge, secular or religious, down their throat as a child. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, right? All these things. Not to force any knowledge, religious or secular, down anybody's throat as a child. Right, as a child should be able to what? Be a child, right? A child should be able to be a child. Eat well, play, right? Eat well and play, right? That's what it means to be a child. You eat well, you play, you explore, right? A child would get his or her own understanding through exploration, through its own exploration, his or her own exploration of whatever it is, through that mechanism of play. Right? So even if it's Arabic, even if it's a Quran, even if it's a secular knowledge, even if it's whatever form of education, is not to be forced upon any child, right, during that childhood, right? Else that's going to result in problems later on that you might not be able to perceive at that time in childhood, right? Next, refrain from being a seductive force, a force of seduction, right? Whether in a relationship, not in a relationship, well, it doesn't matter, right? Refrain from being a seductive force, right? Meaning to seduce people into doing something that they should not be doing, right? Refrain from being a force of seduction, right? And this is intentionally. Something's happening in life and is unintentional, so be it, right? Without knowledge or out of ignorance, and so be it, right? But we're talking about we have the knowledge now, right? So refrain from being a force of seduction to anybody else in the world, right? So we're talking about building what? Appropriate relationships, right? Building appropriate or divine, godly, God-ordained, godly relationships if you have to get into a relationship with somebody else, right? Refrain from the act of seducing somebody else, right? Right, so it says that will to allow not your soul to be enticed into that which you're not supposed to be enticed into, right? A refrain from allow, and this can be regarded to anybody. Something you see online, somebody see in person, right? And your soul, right? Your soul is drawn to something, or your body is drawn to something, or your mind is drawn to something that is not supposed to be drawn to, right? Refrain from being drawn to that which you know you're not supposed to be drawn to, right? Refrain from allowing yourself to be enticed by that which you should not be enticed into, right? Next, we're talking about law, right? Legislation, right? So human legislation. I'm not going to say that human legislation is different from God's or Allah legislation. What I want to say is that there's certain structures that were put into place to carry out the will of God, right? And what we should do is to ensure that those structures, right, or people involved in those structures make the legislation or amend legislation or make new legislation to come into alignment with the principles or the teachings, right, or the teachings of the book, right, or which is the guidance of God, which is the guidance of Allah, right? So the legislation, right, the human legislation should be made in such a way or amended in such a way that it comes closer in alignment with that of God's law, right? God's legislations, right? Or encompassing or practicing the virtues that are espoused in the book, right? Next, health, right? Be healthy, eat healthy, encourage others to do the same, right? Be healthy, eat healthy, live healthy, and encourage somebody to do the same, right? This health could be what? Physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, any kind of health. Next, refrain from coercing people, right? So in this way of life, it should be you encourage, right? You bring someone into the fold of your understanding, right? You bring someone into the fold of your understanding. You don't coerce, you don't force, right? You do not coerce, you do not force, but you bring people into the fold of your understanding, right? And that can only be done with what? A measure of what? Compassion, a measure of empathy, so on, right? Refrain from stealing, right? So honesty, right? This is honesty, right? Refrain from stealing. If you have to give and you're encouraged to give, right? And giving would what? Prevent. This is what is going to help people to what? Stop stealing, because what? When people do not have, that is when they steal, right? When people, due to historical disadvantage, do not have, that is what prompts people to steal, right? We're talking about black collar criminals, right? Black collar crime we're talking about, right? When people emerge from a situation of historical disadvantage, this is what prompts people to steal, right? So give people opportunity, give people chance, right? Opportunities, chances, right, for development, right? Right, and this one, 101, right? Surah 12, 101. This is a suggestion. I suggest, right? Everybody should actually die with the understanding of the message of the Quran, right? Everybody should what? Die with the understanding of the message of the Quran, right? Everyone should die, right? Henceforth, understand with the understanding of the message of the Quran, right? This is what it means to die Muslim, right? You should die with an understanding of the message of the book, right? Right, 111, right? Important point, and this is the reality that the Quran is in fact the end game, right? And reiterating the point that after the Prophet, that there is no other way of life that is acceptable to Allah, right? After the coming of the Prophet, after the appearance of the final Prophet, there is no other way of life that is acceptable to Allah, right? Reiterating the fact that this book or this way of life is in fact the end game and is a culmination, right? Is in fact the culmination of all past stories, all past legends, and not only the culmination, but in fact the doing away with all past stories, all past legends, right? And reiterating that there's a message to be derived from these things, and all these stories and all the legends have no sense or make no sense unless the message is actually applied, right? So the Quran is in fact the end game, right? The end game and the culmination of all that was past, right? Things that people invented, did not invent. The book itself is not an invention, right? But it's a culmination, right, of the understanding of all past legends, all past stories, and it is a concise book with all these messages of all past ancient teachings, right? So it is, as said, is a very powerful book, right? Is a book sent down for healing and guidance, and the book is your judgment, right?